And Dr. Quinn, can you tell us what we need to know about this variant as of right now? I know it's a new emerging thing.
Right. Well, right now it's been classified as a variant of concern. And the reason for this is they found evidence that this variant has mutations of the spike protein. That's the part of the virus that attaches to the cells to allow the virus to invade the cells. What's very, very troublesome about this mutation is the fact that they've seen up to 30 mutations of that spike protein. And what's being predicted is this number of mutations gives this spike protein an advantage, makes it more effective, meaning that if someone is around another person that has this new Omicron variant, there's a very high probability that it's more infectious, meaning that there's a higher probability that it'll be passed on from one person to another. There's also concern that the antibodies that result from the vaccinations or from natural infection are not quite as effective with this new variant. So right now there's a lot of information out there. We're watching closely, but we have to really, really be aware of what's going on.
So in other words, we don't know how much our vaccine that we've had will protect us. What about the booster? Will getting the booster help us?
Well, what we do know about the booster, the scientific data has overwhelmingly demonstrated once you get vaccinated, about 6 months later, that's after your second Pfizer or Moderna, or 2 months after your Johnson & Johnson, the research has shown that your protection rate is going down as far as the strength of your antibodies. But when individuals are getting these boosters, their antibody rates go up. That means the protection, the antibody, the response goes up drastically, greater than 90%. That's why it's so important everybody get those boosters. Now, with this new Omicron variant, is it going to be susceptible to the vaccinations? That's not yet determined, but I watched a lot of reports, and overwhelmingly it's being determined that even if it's less susceptible to the vaccinations, it will have some susceptibility. So our best protection is to go ahead and get vaccinated if we have not done so. And if we haven't gotten our boosters, let's get those boosters, because we need as much protection as possible, because also they're evaluating, is it more virulent, meaning is it more deadly? So getting that protection, that's something that we all really need to do right now if we have not yet done so.
And I kind of got a two-part question for you. Do we have any documented cases in the United States? And then two, so this is the second variant off the original COVID virus. It seems to be that this is going to be something that we maybe have to deal with on a yearly basis, like the flu, and it being kind of different every year, although it's the same strain of the virus. Can you comment on that as well?
Most definitely. Good question. As of today, we have not identified any specific infections of anyone in the United States with the Omicron variant, but it was noted that it's been identified in Canada. I want to say they had 2 cases. It started in South Africa, according to the reports. They've seen it in other parts of Europe, in Hong Kong, also in Australia. So it's getting around. Now, note, the only way that it can be identified is with sequencing. And everybody that contracts coronavirus, their particular infection is not identified that specifically. So it might take a while for us to identify it in the United States, but a lot of the reports are predicting that it's probably already here. That's why it's so important that we get those vaccinations. But as far as, are there going to be more mutations? Well, definitely there will be, because what happens is that's just the environment's way of reproducing. Every time the virus infects a person, it reproduces. There's going to be a little bit different copies made. Those are mutations. The problem with this Omicron variant is these mutations give it an advantage, or what's being noted with the data. So that's why it's so important we get as many people vaccinated and get the booster as soon as possible, because we can drive down the infection rates with vaccinations, and that way we can drive down the opportunity for mutations, because the more people unvaccinated, the more likely we'll get mutations. That's why we have to get everybody vaccinated. It's so important.
Dr. Quinn, thank you so much. Such good information. We certainly appreciate it. And we'll be back with you, I know, probably later this week with more questions for you. So thank you, Dr. Timothy Quinn. As always, a pleasure to have you on.
Hey, thank you for having me.